All right, everybody. Monday, September 16th. Different lineup today. I got Coach Holmes with me. It's earlier. The sun's still out. He's got banjos on the wall, rocket double lettering VPI and Virginia Tech. This is Billy Ray Mitchell. I'm wearing the New York Mets hat. They are the hottest team in baseball. They're actually competing with your Braves, Coach Holmes, for that wild card.
I think they're ahead of the Braves by a game.
But we're not here to talk baseball. We're here to talk football. Virginia Tech got the monkey off their back, beat ODU 37-17. I can't believe that's a sentence that I'm saying, but it is a sentence that is true. A lot of crazy things to talk about. We got the broadcast. We got John Love missing his first field goal in forever, APR, bunch of stuff. But let's go ahead and let's kick this off with a Hokie haiku. We got two. We got one from Pete McGee, as we always do. Elevator up, ODU down in Norfolk. The curse is broken. Well done, as always. And then Oswald, I love this one. This one's creative. The old dirty U beat, this is excluded, but Salt Life, stickers off them, revenge on the coast. So very well done, both of you. Fantastic. Coach Holmes, how have you been? What's been going on? Talk to me a little bit about your life update. What do we got real quick?
Everything's been going great. Loving life here in Colorado, except the fact that I can't make it to Blacksburg on game days. Really missing out on stuff like that. But got my little boy is finishing up fall baseball right now. My wife, her career is doing great. So everything's really great here in Castle Rock. And by the way, I know we'll kind of hit on this maybe in a little bit later, but don't forget to follow at Hokie Hitter for the plays of the week this week, and don't forget to check out the 10-minute tailgates.
Coach, you've been doing an awesome job with that. For those of you unfamiliar, Coach Holmes does sit down and breaks down a scheme or occurrence that comes from X's and O's every single week. That is on our YouTube channel and also on the Hokie Hitter social pages. And then also the tailgate. What is it called? What's the spicy name for it?
The 10-minute tailgate.
10-minute tailgate, where Coach gives you a opponent relevant recipe. Wow, that's a mouthful, but that is true, and that's a double entendre. So here we go. Where did we watch? I watched from the couch. It was my first time out and about in Charlotte. Spent most of the day at Sycamore, but when the Hokies came on, it was time to get home. ESPN Plus, kind of shoddy. Not sure if we can get it in the bar. So I did go home and watched the entire game from my couch right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Were you on the couch, Coach, or were you out and about?
I cannot sit down and watch a game. I don't care where I'm at. There was no couch involved. I do have a pretty nice little man cave set up here with a couple of televisions. So I had the multi-view that had some of the other games on, and then of course I had the Hokies on the big screen. I had the kegerator flowing. It was game time. It was rocking and rolling. But here in lovely Castle Rock, Colorado.
I can't say enough awful things about this broadcast. It was, I mean, when I graduated from high school in 2014 and went to Virginia Tech and wanted to watch my high school team play, I had better options than what we had available on Saturday. This is one of the ugly sides of playing the way that we have for the last 10 years. You end up on channels like this. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. So, if we're writing a wish list to the athletic department, to the powers that may be, not only do we not want to go to Norfolk again, we don't ever want to play on ESPN Plus again. Now, I know apparently the school's responsible for the broadcast. I don't care. It was on ESPN airwaves. It was awful. The camera was everywhere. I felt like I was having vertigo. We had talking during commercials sometimes. It was awful.
Really bad. Something that really just popped right when it first started, literally popped. They must have hit a switch on the guy's microphone. Tarkington, I think it was Chip Tarkington, the broadcast. I don't know if he's any relation to Fran Tarkington at all, but horrible audio all the way through, and the camera angles were bad. It was just, when you play at a non-Power 5 school on the road, that's what you can expect.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter if we were playing ODU. We could have been playing East Carolina. We could have been playing Liberty. That's what actually, honestly, that's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of the Liberty broadcast from 2 years ago.
Hokies get it done. Didn't look great. But let's go and move on to our theme. Our theme is two-parted here. We finally got the monkey off of our back, but we can't shake the one-quarter monkey who is on our back. I got to tell you, looking at this score, and I'm just going to say it was 37. I'm just going to say it was 37-10 for just myself, because it was, last 7 points get scored on the second team, and time's winding down, and you tell yourself a win is a win is a win. You should feel good about it. But in every Tech game we've played this year, we've had a quarter where it literally feels like the sky is falling, and it actually is, because I went ahead and I looked this up. Virginia Tech has been outscored. I hope you're sitting down. Virginia Tech has been outscored 31-6 in second quarters this season. It's been absolutely awful. Vanderbilt 14-3, Marshall 7-3, ODU 10-0. All other quarters and overtime, Virginia Tech leads 89-34. It is so frustrating to watch. I think it's fair to say this is the first time we really came out and really punched a team in the mouth in that first quarter, putting up 14 points. But it's almost like you go through that quarter, and no matter how the rest of the game goes, you still have this stank on you from that second quarter, Coach. So I don't know how to explain it. I don't know what to think about it, but that's my theme.
Well, we placed a lot of emphasis this week on coming out of the gate strong. I think that was the biggest complaint for most Hokie fans around the country watching the game. They wanted to see us get off to a hot start, and we did, and it looked really good. We ran the ball effectively. We threw the ball in spots where we needed to. We looked efficient moving the football. The problem with that is that now we seem to have a continuity problem. Either we can't just carry that on, and I think the third quarter lulls have been a carryover from having bad second quarters. We've not just had bad first quarters, had bad second quarters. And I think that lack of energy carries over, but we end up becoming a second half team and turning it on, but like we did against Vanderbilt, but it's too late. You're already setting yourself up behind, you're setting up behind the chains, to use a football term. It's just not a good look. We got to figure out some way to keep not being too high, not being too low, being kind of that middle all the way through, and just being hard-nosed and competitive all the way through, and not letting emotions get the best of us. And I think that's what happens going into that third quarter. I think we got kind of dragged a little bit in that second quarter, and there was some, couple of long offensive drives, but I think we got 2 field goals out of those 2 drives. Just not a very, not anything to write home about. And I think that's what led to that kind of lull in the third quarter.
So if we look specifically at the offense, we'll talk about the defense, but spoiler alert, the defense played really well. Second week in a row, defense came out to play. Awesome game on the defensive side of things. But offensively, we'll start with the positives. If you didn't watch any of the game and you opened, your Bleacher Report app, you're probably like, wow, okay, looks like we figured something out. Because on paper, 465 yards of total offense, 289 yards on the ground. That's 5.7 yards per rush. Virginia Tech scored on 5 of their 6 possessions to start the second half, or first 6 possessions. They scored on 5 of their first 6 possessions in the second half. I don't know if we had more than 6 possessions in the second half. It's bad wording by me. 293 total yards from Kyron Drones and 2 touchdowns. It was his best game of the year so far. What did you see from Kyron's game on Saturday, Coach? Because I think he still has some work to do in the air, and I think that he's shouldering most of the blame for that. And I don't think that it falls 100% or even most on his shoulders, kind of what's going on in the passing game. But his body language to me was the biggest step forward that he took this week. Almost looked like Kyron of old post-Pitt last year.
Yes, it looked to me like they finally told him to, hey, just be you. Go out and play ball. He took off running a little bit more when he had availability. He wasn't trying to hang in the pocket or even on the rollouts, hold on to the ball where he would get in trouble in previous weeks. If he saw an opening, he took it. And the couple of those hits that he delivered, on that big long run, especially, though, that was reminiscent of him seeking out that defender again the Purdue game last year. Just going out there and making plays. And I think with a quarterback like Drones, if you try to make him a 3-step drop, multiple read passer, that's not his game. And by taking the leash off, for lack of a better term, because he's a dog, let him get out there and go and do what he does and play naturally and play free. I think, Tech's going to be much better overall. I think what we've been seeing for the last 2 previous weeks was kind of like those first 2 weeks that we saw when he started against Rutgers and Marshall last year, was a very kind of methodical pace to the offense. Wasn't really as up-tempo as we thought we were going to see this year. And it's been something that I think Drones this week, you saw a lot more flexibility. He was a lot more free in making adjustments and calls to the line. They're not perfect, but he's out there playing the game that he wants to play.
So another positive, Jalen Lane, 7 receptions for 106 yards and 1 touchdown. First and foremost, absolutely naked, wide open on one of his touchdowns. But one of the things that really impressed me about Jalen Lane is I wish that you could easily find like yards after catch in college. They don't offer it. He is absolutely awesome with the football in his hands, getting him into any type of space. And Coach, I want to hear what you have to say about this. Like, it almost seems like we're trying too hard to screen to him to get him into space. I think that's the spirit of the exercise for so many screens that we're running, is to get him in space. But essentially, anytime he has the ball in space, he's making plays.
Yeah, I think there's some merit to wanting to get the guy the ball in space. He's absolutely electric. When you get him moving east-west and get the ball moving side to side, we have a lot of guys on the team that can do that. I think where we get into some problems is that everybody knows that's what we're trying to do. We have Ollie Jennings, we got Daquan Felton, we have Gosnell. Those guys are your vertical threats and they can stretch deep. But here's the other thing. Lane's also a vertical threat. Being able to kind of change up personnel a little bit. I know we were talking about Jalen Lane here, but this is also a place where XTB shine. This is a place where Takai Heath could also shine on the field at the same time. I think our personnel groupings within our wide receiver group, it's either all or none. We either have our top 4 in there, and then when we take everybody out. We don't have Felton and Heath on the same side as Gosnell and Lane. Or put Jennings in there, with XTB. We don't have anything like that where we're kind of mixing and matching. So it's multiple threats in different parts of the field where now the defense has to guess. If you see Jalen Lane line up as the third receiver in a 3-by-1 set, it's going to be a screen. I can sit here from my couch and I can tell that's what we're going to do. So being able to move personnel groupings around and be a little bit more creative with the formations that we're using, I think would go a long way into getting those guys the ball in space and making it a little bit more effective.
So talking a little bit about the screens and concerns and the couple things that give me pause here. Number one, it's just execution in the red zone has been a challenge for Virginia Tech especially these last 2 games. The first drive out of the half, we get an ODU 3-and-out. Kyron has his 53-yard run to get the Hokies first and goal on the 8. First and goal on the 8, the Hokies go screen for a loss of 2, quarterback dive for 4 yards, and then quarterback draw, which, to your point, everybody in America knows that that's what they're going to run, is a quarterback draw. You get 3 yards, you end up with a field goal. The very next drive, Old Dominion fumbles. 1st and 10 from Old Dominion's 18, incomplete pass, Tuden for 3 yards, incomplete pass, field goal. Like, when you're watching this offense and it kind of seems like a truck slipping out or an engine trying to get started, like it almost looks like we're trying to figure out still what the identity is. And, what do you think is the winning formula for this offense, and what what gives in like just the overall product look in the way that it does? It just looks like we're struggling to move the ball at all.
Again, I don't like to ever talk bad about a coach because being a former coach myself, I think that's just, bad juju or whatever you want to call it. But I really think that we have an idea of what we want to do. I don't think we have the breadth of playbook to necessarily get it done. I don't know if that's because we have too many moving pieces on the offensive line and they're still trying to learn their spots. But when you're down there at the 8-yard line and it's first and goal at the 8-yard line, can you give me some type of double pull, some type of guard tackle counter combo, something where we're getting linebackers confused and we're trying to move east-west a little bit? And we did that a little bit last year. But the only time that we get linemen moving is when and I love it, the H-back run game is working great. But I'd like to see, spread them out on the outside. Let's keep 6 in the box and let's confuse them with some misdirection. Or use your 6'5" wide receiver and throw them a jump ball every once in a while when you're at the 8-yard line. Do that on first down. At least now the secondary has to think that this might be a threat. But I think the problem is that we either don't have that section of the playbook, period, or we literally can't run it because we can't execute it in practice. So I think our playbook is very vanilla. We do have a few H-back runs that we can run. We can run an off-tackle stretch. We can run some jet sweeps. We can run some screens. But I think our breadth of playbook is not, at least it's not being shown that it's there.
It's interesting, right? Because I think there are a couple things. I think we've shown a couple of gadget plays. We had the Jalen Lane touchdown where you got Parker Clements doing like jumping jacks. But I think that we've almost shown more versatility in who goes out there and runs the plays than the actual plays. Like, I mean, yesterday watching, Takai Heath was in there. I think I saw XTB. Colin Schlee was in there. Felton, Jennings. I mean, obviously Jalen Lane. We have a ton of guys going in there and running the plays. And maybe this is something that we were holding back to get to conference play or get to the Rutgers game. And, if this is 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I'm saying go out and win the game. But here we are. Rutgers is next week. It's going to be a great challenge for Virginia Tech. I think it's going to be an awesome measuring stick game. We're not going to talk about it yet, but, I'm hoping that if we can just eliminate the third quarter or the second quarter in some of these games, the scores are completely different. The vibe around the team is completely different. The way that I don't want to say the vibe around the team because I have no idea what that is. What I'm saying is the fans' vibe towards the team is very different. So very interested to see if we can just figure out the second quarter. If you figure out the second quarter, the entire product looks different. Yep. So my other concern is actually around the lack of substitutions. And tell me if you feel the same. Bashal Tutin, I mean, the guy's a baller. 115 yards, 2 touchdowns in this football game. He had 21 carries against ODU. He has 52 carries on the year. He has the 13th most carries in the country. Got banged up a little bit this game. It just concerns me a little bit that we don't seem to want or have interest in giving the ball in a running situation to anyone other than Kyron Jones and Bashal Tutin. Malachi Thomas is a guy who's been playing football forever. He was a freshman in Fuentes last year. He's played a good bit of ball. PJ Prelu, shown flashes. I worry about Tutin's ability to stay healthy if this is the workload that he's going to see this entire season.
Yeah, I know we want him to touch the ball because it's almost 6 yards guaranteed every time he touches the ball. He's a phenomenal running back. He does great things, catches the ball out of the backfield. He does everything you want. He is a Sunday player. Even if he doesn't get drafted, he will be on a roster. I firmly believe that. The thing is, we have not really put ourselves in position to be able to spell him early. So in this game was a little bit different. We got up 14, and that after we scored that second touchdown, Malachi Thomas came in and I think he had a series a full series with him in the backfield. I think the problem is that I don't know if this coaching staff trusts that Malachi Thomas is going to be able to be that guy, because he can't do the things out of the backfield that Bashal Tutin does. He's not as adept of a pass catcher. Maybe he's not as good of a blocker in the passing game when you got to keep him in the block. So I can kind of understand, but at the same time, that's where we got Coach Brooks in there that's got to really be able to step in and say, hey, look, something happens, you're 1B, you got to step in there and you got to be able to do all these things we're asking of you. And I think that he can, but it's one of those things you just hadn't really put it on film yet this year.
I'll tell you, one of the backs who really kind of reminds me of Tutin, and if you're into running back play of a guy who everybody knows he's getting the football and he's still going to fall forward, it's Cam Scadaboo over at Arizona State. He is a ton of fun to watch. And I know we just talked about how Tutin's getting too many carries. What's he at, 57, 52? He is at 52 on the year. Cam Scadaboo has 68 carries on the year. Still too much, but he is another fun guy to watch. And look, in no way is this I want to see Tutin carry the ball less at all. It's just I think that we have backs on this roster who can take a little bit of that load off of Tutin. So,
well, I to tag onto that, I think there needs to be a little bit more creativity in the play calling, where you can have Malachi, for example, go in on second down. So you can start with Tutin out there first down, do whatever play you're calling. But if it's second down, let's say second and short, and you're running a mid pass, let's bring Malachi Thomas in there to carry out the play action. Then you can bring Tutin in for a third down. Yeah, so it may not be a run, may not be a carry, but you're taking that time, that play off his legs. So and maybe that's not their formula. I don't know how their running back room runs, but you can mix in players and personnel, especially with the helmet comms this year, where everybody's kind of getting to play on the fly anyway. You can be able to mix that up from play to play instead of series for series.
Turning the page over to the defense, again, aside from some contained issues, which were extremely frustrating, but aside from these contained issues, pretty damn good all afternoon. Coach Pry alluded to this in his post-game press conference. He said the busted plays were from a miscommunication. Can't have that. He knows that. Everybody knows that. I'm just reiterating, we can't not have anybody on contain with no safety help in cover zero. It is go hit your forehead on the goalpost situation when that happens. So, Coach, when you're repping against option like that, like what talk to us a little bit about the communication piece. Like for somebody that doesn't know what that means. Okay, what is contained? What is the communication? Like you're dealing with an option team or they're potentially running a little bit of speed option. What does that mean?
So it's essentially a version of the triple option. And in this case, the triple option is the pass game. So the quarterback and the running back are going to have your mesh point where they're meeting at that handoff behind. And what that quarterback is looking at the defensive end. Usually the offensive line is going to be blocking away from the play call. So if the quarterback opens up to the right side, all the linemen are blocking to the left. They're leaving that right side defensive end, or on the left defensive end, they're leaving him on an island. They're making him make a choice. Usually the way the defense will be set up is they'll say, okay, defensive end has the quarterback. There's no question you got the quarterback. So and then you'll have usually an outside linebacker, star, or a safety come down that'll have the pitch back, that'll have the running back. You have these opposing forces that are kind of going at it, but where we get into trouble, and Billy, you know this too, every time a tackle it leaves and blocks down away from you, as a defensive end, you're taught to what? You're taught to squeeze down, right? You keep your shoulders square to the line, but squeeze down because you don't want to let that gap on the inside happen. So when that happens and Tech does it, whether it's Cole Nelson, Burgos, APR, no problem. They squeeze down to keep their shoulders square, it's fine. Where we get into problems is when we get upfield past heel depth of the offensive lineman and then squeeze down. We lose all of our angle. And so when we say lose contain, we don't want to let anything get to our outside, past our outside shoulder, and we force everything back inside where you have 10 of your best friends coming to make the play. So when that happens, and it's just playing with a little too much aggression at times and just trying to figure out how to rein that in and play a little bit more under control. Because honestly, the biggest thing that I see with our defensive line play in general, not just against the option, is that the defensive linemen rush so far upfield. I used to call them stupid penetrators, because they would get too far. They would get too far backfield, and you're given all these cutback lanes, whether it's in the middle, and you're just making that job so much easier. It's much easier just to play kind of basketball defense against that spread option or against that zone, where you're just kind of shuffling back and forth, and you're guarding a point guard. Mm-hmm. And so it's fixable, it's correctable, but it's also breaking a lot of tendencies and bad habits.
Yep. 100%. And for the most part, that's pretty much the only thing that Old Dominion could get going. We held
two plays, really. 2 plays.
It was 2 plays. It was 2 plays that accounted for most of their yards, or at least close to it. Held Old Dominion to under 300 yards. They finished with 293. Old Dominion was 2 of 13 on third down. They turned the ball over twice. APR had 4 sacks, 1 strip sack, and a fumble recovery, and 7 tackles. Played his absolute tail off. Post-game, Coach Price said that sacks come in bunches, TFLs come in bunches, and they certainly did for the defense. It seemed like 2 drives in a row. We were just absolutely harassing the quarterback. Look, last touchdown in the 4th came against most of the backups. Since Vanderbilt, Mansour Delane has 2 interceptions in 2 games. Granted, probably the easiest interception of his career in this football game. But I have no notes. I think the defense has responded fantastically in the last 2 weeks.
Based on our previous defenses that we've had in the past years under the prior regime, people are going to freak out anytime that a long run is given up.
Yeah.
You can't live your life freaking out over 2 plays. Like we cannot get to that point as Hokie fans.
Yeah.
Like I watch every single game multiple times. That's just me being a degenerate for film. But our defense, he's not playing absolutely his best ball because I think he's still learning to navigate the system. Sam Brumfeld is playing Mike fairly well, fairly decently. I hope Kelly Lawson didn't hurt too bad. I haven't heard anything about that. I hope he can come back. He's just a genetic freak. Keonta Jenkins when he's in there, but Dante Lovett, Caleb Woodson, those guys, when these younger guys are getting, and Caleb Spencer got some run this week. When those younger guys are getting in the game, those guys are flying around to the football. And that's really what you want from your defensive secondary. You want them flying around to the ball. You want them creating havoc and causing chaos and all the other buzzwords and keywords. But defensive line is playing. Fuga had a good game. Gilliam had a good game. Copeland had a good game on the inside. And it may not necessarily show up in the PFF grades because they did get some chunk yardage. But I'm telling you, our defense is pretty good. They will be tested this week, though.
Peebles is a problem. I'm pretty surprised he wasn't flagged a couple times towards the end of the game. I am surprised also that anybody would want any problems with Peebles as well. That was surprising.
Yeah.
Switching over to special teams, John Love allegedly had his first miss this weekend. I mean, some people are going to say I jinxed him because of last week. I didn't. I mean, this guy has been absolutely money, and I'm not going to not talk about it. To give you just a comparison, I was actually blown away by this. John Love on his career is 29 of 33, which is good for 87.9%. We were just talking about it. We've had some pretty good run of kickers here at Virginia Tech. So I took the best season of the other kickers at Virginia, or our previous 2 tick kickers here. Brian Johnson was 82.6 in 2019 and 76.1 in his career. John Parker Romo was 81.8% in 2021 when he took over for Virginia Tech. So I'm just gonna say 29 of 33 for your career is actually unbelievable. Like
Absolutely.
hats off, John Love. Guy's a beast. And it was windy in Norfolk too. And he
But
was
plus I'm pretty sure it was tipped.
I think it was tipped. That's why I said allegedly.
Yeah.
It's very hard to tell on the Zapruder film that we have to work with from this previous football game. But look, all in all, I step away from this football game and we didn't win by 50. We handled business and won the game. I think we've identified what we need to fix. It's the second quarter and just kind of get our pace and our feet under ourselves offensively. We know Bashal Tutin's a problem. We got to find a way to get Ali Jennings and Daquan Felton involved. Jalen Lane has been fantastic. The Gosnell brothers have been fantastic. But Lane and Felton, Jennings and Felton have the talent to be two of the best receivers in the conference. We have yet to see them have their breakout game yet. And quite frankly, we've yet to see Kyron have his breakout game through the air yet. So hoping there's better things to see into the future. This is going to be a huge challenge for us. If there are things that are being held back in the playbook or things that we were waiting to show, you're going to start seeing them now if they exist. So huge opportunity for Virginia Tech and a really, really good opponent coming into Lane Stadium on Saturday.
Yeah, I believe what you said about Ali Jennings and Daquan Felton. I think they're a victim of their own success. I think a reason why we're seeing a lot of zone coverage played against us is so they can high-low those guys, put a guy behind them and a guy underneath them, and kind of bracket them out of every play. And I think that's why Gosnell has had the success that he has. That's why Benji Gosnell from the tight end spot has been coming open a lot. And those are usually later in the progression, later in the play connections that we're making. And I think it's going to take us running the football effectively early to get those guys to break out of out of zone coverage, to be able to bring another guy down in the box, to be able to try to take away the run. That's going to open up it's going to open up everything else for all of our receivers. You can conceptually break, and I talked about this on the hitter last week. You can conceptually scheme stuff in to be a cover 4 beater or a cover 2 beater or a cover 3 beater. But again, that only works if you've got a quarterback who's adept at looking off safeties and looking off coverages and coming back. We can't do that. And I'm not saying Kyron can't. He doesn't have the time to sit back in the pocket and make those reads where he can look a safety off and then come back. Mm-hmm. So we have to run the ball effectively. We have to run the ball effectively early. We have to invite a safety down into the box to help stop the run. And once we do that, the rest of our passing game will open up. That's what happened against Pitt. That's what happened against Syracuse, where they started playing zone against us last year. We started just nailing them with the run, whether it was quarterback run or whether it was Tutin running the ball. They had to bring that extra guy in the box, and then it was Katie bar the door. We're throwing the ball downfield. So I think you'll see that this week. Greg Schiano, defensive mind. Really, I know this is not the preview podcast, but defensive mind. But I really think you'll start seeing some more of that come through because they're going to be aggressive to stop the run.
My helmet sticker this week, I got to give it to Kyron Drones. Obviously, it was his best statistical game of the year so far. But again, just his body language, that 53-yard run, I got to tell you, I was pretty angry and pretty bummed out before that play. And I feel like it kind of changed the tide of where we were. A lot of, I don't want to say negativity, but not a lot of energy coming from the Virginia Tech football team. You're in Norfolk. You don't really want to be there. You got a huge game next week and, whatever. I will say we didn't come out sluggish. That was on my wish list. I do want to give props to say we did not come out sluggish. So that's nice. But I do think Kyron Drones and his aura, as they're saying now on the internet, really does help and elevate this football team, and he exuded that on Saturday. Who's got your helmet sticker this week?
My helmet sticker this week goes to Johnny Garrett, Mr. No Name. Didn't even have his name on the back of his jersey. I don't know if there was blood on his original jersey or what, and they had to put another one down there. But Xavier Chaplin went down early in the game. I think it was the first drive he went down. I think he got hurt in warmups.
Yep.
Injured in warmups. But Johnny Garrett came in there and played fantastically at left tackle, and that's hard to do. It's hard to replace anybody, especially because you're not getting a whole lot of reps. But to be able to step in there he was one of the key blocks on Tootin's long touchdown run that he had, that 33-yard touchdown run, washing guys down, moving his feet, playing aggressively up front, good in pass pro. So looks like he's got some fairly decent feet. I haven't looked at his PFF grades, but having him in there, man, that meant a lot. And with some of the struggles that we've had that's at the other tackle position, you almost wonder if maybe he and Chaplin, one of them, can maybe slide over there. And Billy, you know this as well as anybody, it's really hard for offensive linemen. You're either good on the right side or good on the left side. It's very rare that you have a swing guy that can play on either side of the ball.
Mm-hmm. Awesome game from him. I think a lot of people didn't even know who he was because he was lacking the nameplate, but he did play awesome. I feel like that hasn't been talked about enough. Over-unders from Grant Watson. Hokies points scored. He said 31.5. That went over to 37. Tootin rushing yards, 99.5. It went over at 115. Hokies sacks, 3.5. Went over to 5. I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, ODU has given up 5 sacks in every game they have played this year. They have a bye next week, which is much needed for Old Dominion. Coach, we're going to do ring around the ACC. I'm just going to read through these, and if you have something, just interrupt me. But we had some good and a whole lot of bad. Let's talk about the good first. Number 1, Pittsburgh, backyard brawling, defeats West Virginia at, if you want to call it home, you can call it home, but they win that game 38-34. Question, I don't understand why Pitt's not ranked. I don't care how they're winning football games. I don't care if they're losing going into the fourth quarter. There are some really questionable teams ranked right now, and one of the teams that is not ranked is Pittsburgh, who has beaten Cincinnati and has beaten West Virginia. So
if BC could be ranked by winning as ugly as they won, then Pitt should be ranked. And I hate Pat Narduzzi, not a fan, but they deserve to be ranked being 3-0.
Absolutely.
That was a big win.
Huge win for Pat Narduzzi, who a lot of people were selling stock on coming into the year, including myself. So Pat Narduzzi is 3-0. Awesome effort from Boston College. Truly, to go on the road and play against an SEC team like that with a team that, look, everybody was picking to finish last in the ACC. I love watching Castellanos play. You know what you're going to get with Boston College out of their offensive line. I think their defense is much improved. They are a really solid football team, and absolutely could have won this game. They fall 27-21 against a really, really good Missouri team. Yeah,
Missouri came out sluggish.
Mm-hmm.
It was that proverbial trap game. You come out and you're underestimating your opponent because they come from a perceived weaker conference. And Boston College jumped out to an early lead and then kind of let them slowly get back in the game. And I'm telling you, Luther Burden is a straight up animal.
Mm-hmm.
He is unstoppable. That's got first round draft pick wide receiver written all over him.
Cal. Wow. Cal is 3-0. They're headed to Florida State next week. They've already beaten Auburn. They beat San Diego State last week. They go to Florida State this week, and they go to Miami, or Miami comes to them the week after that. They're just a team to keep an eye on. I put a tweet out earlier today. I don't think ACC fans were, number 1, expecting there to be actual Cal fans. I didn't know that they existed. They do, and they rock at internet. And 2, I think we all just kind of expected Cal to suck. There are some people who were saying, and I got to give credit to Robert Irby, Sam, Jesse, the guys who actually pay attention to some of these other schools. They're like, hey, Cal's going to be pretty good. I got to be honest. I just saw the brand come in here, and I was like, they're going to suck.
Yep.
They just are. And they don't. They're pretty damn good.
Is Jaden Ott back, or is he still banged up?
I don't know. I think I got to be honest. If he has to miss a week, it might be it might be this one because on the bad side of things, Florida State is awful. They are a bad football team. I don't think that I was never fully bought in to Florida State like making a run at the title again. I never got on board with that, but I expected them to be respectable. I expected them to be solid. And this is probably an inappropriate reference, but I'll use it. It's interesting, this NIL world, because DJU is almost in a position where like a little league football player would be if maybe his mother's divorced and has a crush on like the coach, or she paid for like all of the shoulder pads for the entire youth like team to have, because either their second quarterback is awful, or they can't justify not starting DJU because of what they paid him in NIL funds. I mean, it is so difficult to watch. I think his stat line, I think he was like 6 of 10 for 37 yards at some point in the second quarter. I mean, it is god awful.
It's bad. And this is the downside of the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
You can luck out like Florida State did last year and get a bunch of guys that can gel and become a unit together, or you can get a bunch of guys that can come together and everyone's playing as individuals and no one's playing. That's really what it seems like. You turn on Florida State, there's no camaraderie. You don't see anybody dapping each other up on the sideline. You don't see any of that. You just see a whole bunch of guys that were just looking to get a check, looking to get to the next level, looking to try to get some success this one year. And when they got stomped by Georgia Tech and then got pushed around by BC, those guys are there. I think a lot of them are playing not get hurt, to be honest with you. It looked like they're playing timid.
I'm looking at the rest of Florida State's schedule because at first it was, okay, can Florida make a bowl game? If Florida makes a bowl game, it's probably pretty impressive. They're probably going to finish ranked. Looking at Florida and Florida State, we're now in the territory of will both of them combine to go to a bowl game? Because you're not just looking at Florida State is not very good. You're looking at a team that's extremely talented, but a bunch of talented individuals, and talented individuals that are not a team generally pack it in when there's nothing to play for.
Exactly.
And objectively speaking, what they probably came in to play for is not on the table. It's not, unless something, barring significant change in winning the conference, it's not on the table. So Florida State has Cal, tough game, at SMU, tough game, Clemson, Duke, Miami, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Charleston Southern, and Florida.
Ooh, I got 2 on that list.
Looking at that list, like maybe 2 guaranteed wins in Duke and Charleston Southern, but North Carolina, talented team. Duke, I don't really know what to make of Duke. They just played UConn. They're coached by Manny, but this is tough. Like this is with that quarterback play. Florida is a tough place right now for Power 5 football programs, unless you're Miami. And Miami's going to have a tough one and have their hands full at USF this weekend. Yep. So we'll see. We will see. Wake Forest. God, you lose 40-6. First of all, Ole Miss minus 30 was like the freest money of all time. Wake Forest loses 40-6 versus Ole Miss at home. And during the game, cancels their series with Ole Miss. They are paying Ole Miss $1 million to not play us again. Really embarrassing. About as embarrassing as it gets.
Yeah, absolutely. Wake Forest has got a lot of money. Wake Forest is a soft school. I lived in Winston-Salem for 11 years. Everything around Wake Forest is just soft. Mm-hmm. It just really is. And I love Winston-Salem. Don't get me wrong. I lived there for years. But Ole Miss is powerhouse. I got a shout out to my old roommate Marcus, Hotty Toddy Ribs. Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, legit. I mean, absolutely legit. I think it's going to be. I think Georgia's going to stumble eventually, and I think it might be Ole Miss and Tennessee playing for the SEC.
Ole Miss is a powerhouse. They can't do anything on defense. Can't really run the ball either. But they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. You're going to have coaching rumors they're going to be like a must-watch television show because they're going to score a ton of points. Their coach is going to be rumored to take every single job when every job opens up over the course of college football season. And Florida might be open in the next 10 days.
Yeah.
So that is something to watch. Last couple, Duke outlasts UConn at home, 26-21. They had to score 9 points in the fourth quarter to win. I have no idea what to think about that at all.
How bad must Northwestern be?
Yeah. and NC State barely survives Louisiana Tech. I mean, they were getting crushed by Louisiana Tech at the beginning of this game. They ended up winning by 10, but I feel like we do this exercise every 2 years. Like NC State, the Dave Doran thing, I like Dave Doran.
I do too.
I think that NC State is kind of at a point where South Carolina is, where their expectations, every college football fan's expectations are too high. Their fan base's expectations are astronomically too high, like almost approaching South Carolina levels, because Dave Doran, I think it was, can't remember who was doing it. I think it was a On3 or Cover 3 podcast, whatever. Essentially, the point was NC State is in the 95th percentile of the success of their program ever. Like these are the good old days. For a lot of NC State fans, the good old days aren't good enough. And if that's what you're living through as Dave Doran, you might want to go somewhere else, because I don't know how much better NC State can be than winning 9 or 10 games. That's probably the best it's ever going to be.
And NC State has a rabid fan base. I lived in Raleigh for a while too, and I'd go to games when Tech wasn't playing. It's a phenomenal stadium, great fan base, but I think you're right. They're like South Carolina, but they also have this, and it's kind of pun intended because it is NC State. Their color is red. It's a redheaded stepchild syndrome, because they have Chapel Hill and Duke that are right there next to them, and they all want to compete in basketball. They can't hold a candle to them in basketball. So football is the only thing they feel they got a leg up on, and they go out there and they can't even beat them and dominate them in football. Mm-hmm. So it's just this consistently perpetual sorrow that they have. And yeah, that's a great comparison with South Carolina's fan base.
Elsewhere in the country, I got to be honest, Tennessee onside kicked up 30 at home versus Kent State with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They went on to win 71-0. Was it weird? Maybe. I personally don't care too much. I think people that are mad are fans of teams that can't beat other teams by 70. I think that's pretty much what it boils down to. Yep. I don't know what your thoughts are as a former coach. I'm not saying I would do it as a coach. I'm probably not doing it, but I'm not about to be like, this guy's classless. Like, he gets paid to win football games and score points.
Yeah. And with where we are in the 12-team playoff era, you got to think about it from Josh Heupel's perspective. He's going up against Georgia. He's going up against Ole Miss. He's going up against all these other teams in the SEC, Alabama, that he's got to, when it comes down to this committee making decisions about who to place where in this bracket to get a favorable matchup, margin of victory is going to play a role in it. Mm-hmm. So if I'm Josh Heupel and I can score 77 points against Kent State, I'm going to score 77 points against Kent State. It's not, as a coach, it's not my job to stop my offense. It's not that is your job to stop my offense. So that's the old Steve Spurrierism. It's like, I put my second string guys in, but I'm not telling them not to score.
Yep.
That's your job to stop them.
Yep.
So nothing wrong with Josh Heupel there. He's got to get style points. He's got to see that margin of victory go up. He's got to see that average margin of victory go up. So if he does have a squeaker coming up where he wins by 10 and you've won by 60 the previous week, it's going to all average out. So I really think people have never walked those sidelines, they really don't have anything to say about that.
Well said. Last observation from college football this week. The playoffs going to be awesome. It's going to be fun to watch. I'm excited about it. I'd be lying if I didn't say this weekend was the first time I really kind of had like a, you know what? This is one of the effects of the playoff and we're feeling it already. I was at a bar. I was at Bulldogs in Charlotte. And we're with a big group. And one of my buddies is a big Georgia fan. And he's like freaking out watching the Kentucky game. But he's not nearly freaking out as much as he would have been freaking out last year or freaking out 6 years ago.
Yes.
And they end up winning the game. Everything ends up being fine. But I went up to him after the game and I said, do you know what would have happened if you lost this game? Literally nothing. 0 things would have happened. Like, it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe you'd miss out on a bye, but the season's not over. And I love that about college football. I used to love that every single game meant so much. And I'm excited for the playoff. I'm not trying to be boo-hoo about the playoff. I'm just saying that is the first time in real time that I saw that type of reaction. Because even when Ohio State lost to Virginia Tech in 2014, they believed that their season was completely over.
Yeah.
Completely over. And granted to them, they turned it around, but I hate that we lost that in that type of in that world. So
yeah, I think it was a great era where literally every game matters because there was no, I can rest my guys like you do in the NFL. I unfortunately, here's the negative drawback to what you just said. There could be a situation where in the clean old-fashioned hate game, Georgia Tech, Georgia sits its dudes.
Yep. I don't think that's far-fetched. I think that's absolutely going to happen. I don't like. I don't really see a way around that,
which just sucks because my father-in-law is a Georgia Tech alum. I hate that because Georgia Tech could get a win, but it'd be tainted. It'd have an asterisk by it.
Yeah.
That's and those rival. I'll tell you right now, if Virginia Tech playing up against UVA, say for example we go on a run, we're 10-1 going into UVA. If we sit anybody and we end up losing to UVA to save for the potential playoff, that is a fireable offense. Fireable offense.
People, I don't even like thinking about it because it's just it's hard to conceptualize that happening. And I'm not saying the Tech Virginia reference. I'm saying it's difficult to think about like Michigan, Ohio State, and what if Ohio State just decides they're not going to play everybody? And every fan's going to be like, well, we'd never do that.
Or
I'm telling you, some teams might.
Yeah, but what if in that situation, and you just said Ohio State and Michigan, what if they have to play each other 2 weeks in a row?
Exactly. Maybe they have to play each other 2 weeks in a row. Maybe they play each other 3 times.
Yeah.
There could be some scenarios where these teams play 3 times. And again, like an SEC team, to be honest, if you're one of these teams, Alabama, Georgia, probably Tennessee, Texas, if you're one of those 4 teams, you not only have 1 mulligan, you not only have 2 mulligans, you probably have 3 mulligans. You can probably lose 3 games and still get into the college football playoff. And
unless it's an egregious loss.
Of course, if you lose to yeah. If you have an egregious loss, probably not. But that is, I think, what you surrender when you. It's not. I think it is what you surrender when you accept the playoff. So excited for it. Just an observation from this weekend. 2 questions, and then we'll get going here. We got Monday Night Football. Question from AFR, and Coach, I'm going to give these to you.
All right.
Where are the quick throws in the middle of the field, and thoughts on Bowen as offensive coordinator? What does he do well? What does he need to improve upon? And that's it. He was going to ask, where does he rank among Virginia Tech pass coordinators? I mean, we've been all over the place with that, and still, I think our offense is a work in progress. So I think that's kind of hard to answer in year 2.2 So I'll leave it there.
Well, I think that Tyler Bowen, one advantage that he has over previous coordinators is his ability to make adjustments. I wish he would make adjustments quicker, if that makes sense. I think we hang on to our game plan a little too long at times. Sometimes if what you're trying to do is not working, third series, you got to try something new. You got to, I'm not saying you got to throw the baby out with bathwater, but you got to make those changes. With regards to attacking the middle of the field, I think we've taken what the defense gives us. We try a lot to motion and formation people into giving us what we want on the defensive side of things. But what we're seeing happen is those zones that they're playing, they're kind of locking into them, and they're not letting anything get deep. That's number one. That they're taking out the Jennings deep threat. They're taking out the Daquan Felton deep threat. That's completely happening. Now, there are some route concepts that you can put in where you could throw too deep, run a dig on the inside underneath, and have them sit down in the middle of the zone, linebacker. But because teams are getting pressure with four rushers, they're able to drop linebackers into the hook curl zones to take away that middle of the field and that intermediate throw. So once again, it all starts with being able to run the football and establishing the run consistently on early downs, to be able to take one extra defender from the secondary, bring him into the box to help stop the run. Then all that other stuff opens up. So with regards to ranking him with other coordinators, it's really difficult to do other than ranking him up against Cornelsen and Fuente, because previous offensive coordinators, that was a completely different era of college football. We didn't start running the spread until really Fuente got here. We were still lining up, and even when Tyrod and Logan Thomas, all those guys, we were lining up in the I formation and running 3 yards in a cloud of dust. So
would have loved to see them in the spread, for the record.
Yeah, Tyrod I'll tell you what, every record book in the world would have been broken if Michael Vick could have played his spread offense when he was in college. Everything would be done. But anyway, so I'll leave it at that.
And last one here, still from AFR 114. How long do you think it will take drones to get comfortable with reading zone defenses and making the necessary throws sooner? I'll give my 10 cents here. I am no quarterback coach by any means. So I'm going to almost indirectly answer your question. I think that Kyron is, and our offense is, as a whole, not sputtering, but almost unsure of themselves, because I don't think, again, we know what we want to be yet. And when that happens, if that's a second that an offensive lineman is thinking about, wait, where am I supposed to go? Where are my feet supposed to be? Or a running back is thinking, wait, am I at zone 1, zone 2, or zone 3? Or a wide receiver thinking about, hold on, am I on the hash, off the hash? You're not thinking about executing the play until the ball snapped. And it almost needs to become like second nature. The playbook almost needs to become an extension of yourself. And I don't feel like we're at that point yet. That's my answer.
I 100% agree. To quote Crash Davis, don't think you can only hurt the ball club. Yeah. Like there is nothing good in football comes from overthinking. And I think and this is what we saw against ODU, which leads me to believe that better things are around the corner as far as our offense goes, is that we played more freely. You didn't see Bashal Tootin, for example, on his touchdown run, him stuttering and trying to find a hole. He just hit it and was off. Mm-hmm. You didn't see a lot of times, drones, if his first read wasn't there and he saw a gap, he took off. Yep. So we had those opportunities present themselves to us where we could have fallen back into our old bad habits. And unfortunately, I'm a Panthers fan, watching Bryce Young hold the ball.
It's bad, man.
It's bad. Now, he just got benched, but there's been a lot of benchings today. But seeing what drones can do when he can just go out there and play free, I think that's going to really open him up, because once he starts moving freely and they have to respect that quarterback run, teams are going to have to bring somebody else in the box to stop that, because we have a two-headed monster back there, whether it's Tootin or Thomas. I mean, Thomas is getting almost 5 yards carry too when he gets it. So he's pounding the ball usually up the middle. Tootin is your outside east-west guy. You have drones that can escape and make things happen with his legs. We just have to get that other defender in the box. Whatever we have to do to make that happen, to open up the passing game, because right now we are run first down, run second down, pass on third down. Sometimes we are pass first down, run second down, play action, deep ball, third down. We have about 2 or 3 modes of offense.
Yeah.
It's very, very predictable. But I think getting that defensive alignment to where we want it, not necessarily scheming to the defense, but making the defense scheme to us, is going to be the thing that gets us to that next step.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Again, huge measuring stick here for us coming up on Saturday. And Coach Holmes, when are you in Blacksburg? What's your schedule like this year?
I really don't know. I'm hoping I can figure it out towards October and November. I'm really trying to figure out how to work something out there, but tickets are very expensive. So it's not game tickets, plane tickets.
Yeah.
I may be hanging out here with the Denver Hokies and all the cool stuff they got going on, but I will let you guys know at 100% if I make it down there.
Well, thank you, Coach, for joining us this week. Filling in. Always appreciate it. Thank you for everything you do with the Hokie Hitter and with the 10-minute tailgate. You can see that on YouTube. You can see that on social under Hokie Hitter and at Hokies DMB. That's right. Hokies DMB.
Hokie DMB.
Hokie DMB. Almost like David Matthews Band. That's how I remember it when I need to tag him and stuff. But other than that, next time you hear us, we will be previewing Rutgers. And without further ado, take care, everybody. Go Hokies. Beat Rutgers. Enjoy the games.
Go Hokies.